All right, everyone. Welcome back. Another episode, New York Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm Greg Helbeck. I'm here with Michael Pinter. And we got a really relevant show today. We're going to talk about, the nuts and bolts on going out to properties to look at them, how to meet with sellers and how to number one, get the deal if it's a gettable deal. And number two, if we have time, we're going to talk about maybe some things to look out for when you're going to someone's house, some safety things. And I've had a story that I can share with everyone. And Michael's ran into his fair share of crazy people out on the island. So I'm looking forward to the show, and we'll get it kicked off right here, Michael, with the whole myth between buying houses all over the phone versus going to the property to make the offer in person. We know a lot of people who do both. I do a lot of stuff on the phone. You do a lot of stuff in person. There's a mutual friend we got to get on the show, Mr. Dalton, who actually does a hybrid model too. So I think it's definitely something that is more popular now in terms of buying over the phone, but I still believe wholeheartedly, if you can get to that property, you're going to have a way higher chance of getting that deal versus doing it all over the phone. So what are your thoughts on that and kind of your experience? Because you actually still do this to this day.
Sure. So it's funny because I was just watching a recording with Jason Lewis and Cody Hoffine, who are like the two of the three monster investors in Utah. And Cody and Jason both still do in person, but they know a lot of people who do virtual, and they were talking about it. So I feel, and it may be just crazy in my head, that I feel that I have a much better chance of buying the property if I meet the seller. Actually, I think it's true. I think it's a fact that if you meet the seller face to face, you're going to have a better chance of buying the property. The question is, A, are you operating in somewhere that you can get to, right? Because if you're living in New York and you're buying houses in another state, you're not going to be able to get there.
Yeah.
And B, whether that is the best use of your time. So if you have a huge amount of lead flow and you can talk to 40 leads and possibly make 10 offers in the same time that you can go drive out to see a seller, you may be better off doing it virtually, right? For me, I still don't have the lead flow that I want. I'm working my ass off to get there. And I hopefully will get there soon. But for me, I'm in a situation now where I can go on 10 to 15 appointments a week, and I can still do that fine. Really, that my job in my company is basically lead gen and acquisition. I have somebody else doing the lead management and other people doing dispositions. So that's my take on it. But so if you operate in an area close to you and you are in a position where you feel like you're not letting leads go because you're spending all your time driving out there, it's probably the best way to buy properties. But if either of those other instances are the case, if you're buying far away from home where you can't get there, or you'd be better off spending the 2.5 hours it takes to drive to an appointment and deal with it, have the appointment and drive back to the appointment. In those 2.5 hours, you can make a bunch of offers to other people, and that's probably a better use of your time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I've found, at least with myself, a lot, and you mentioned this on when I watch all your videos, so I always kind of know what you're going to say, like in a good way. Like I'm not like your adversarial attorney, like in court or something. You said something the other day. Okay, by the way, I just got to make a shameless plug. Like Mike has a YouTube channel called Flipping and Wholesaling in New York, and I'm an experienced investor in air quotes, and I still think they're awesome. They're informational and they're entertaining. And if you want more of Michael Pinter, without living in his office, I highly recommend you check out his channel. So shameless plug over. You said something about how I think you said like 65% of your deals you've ever done were from owner occupants. I am the polar opposite. I would say 80% of my buys are always with somebody live absolutely nowhere near that property. They are fucking in no man's land. So because of that, I've found that I have done most of my big deals and really profitable deals over the telephone, mostly because the fucking owners didn't even live there.
Right. If the seller's nowhere, even if the house is near you, but the seller is far away, you can't. You're not getting on a plane to go meet him.
Yeah. So I've found that with the nature of the marketing that I do, a lot of the owners aren't living in these properties. A lot of them are unfortunately tenant occupied. So it's a little more hairy to meet them at the property. So I've found that buying over the phone is definitely more difficult, mostly because of you got to know how to make that offer. And I've done, a lot of transactions, so I know the numbers. But if you're brand new, I would say without a doubt, if you can get yourself into as many appointments as possible, mostly just to assess the repair estimate, which we've done episodes on, and also the ARV, which we've done episodes on, you got to get your foot in the door and know the market. especially with the inventory being diverse in the Northeast, whether you're in Jersey, Connecticut, New York, it's just a whole nother animal. And that's a whole nother topic. I've found that if you don't know your stuff, going to the appointment is always going to be more effective. I've just always found that the sellers that I've interacted with, they're not in the property. They're out of state. A lot of them are out of state, honestly. I mean, I would say on my pipeline, I have like 15 or 16 properties right now, and half of them minimum are at least out of state, or they don't even live. They're in state, but they're nowhere near that property. So, Mike, when you're going to an appointment, what is your process look like for when you go on? Because you do a lot of appointments. You just went on one that we had together up in I think Middle Island or out in Middle Island. So you do this a lot. You go on way more appointments than I do. So what does your process look like, and how do you ensure that whether you get the deal or not, you're working that system, productively?
So from John Martinez, the first thing you want to do is really set the stage, right? Which is you want to tell the seller exactly how long it's going to, right? You want to set time, agenda, and outcomes. You want to say, listen, this is probably going to take about 20 minutes to a half hour. And that's good because theoretically, they may say this guy's going to keep me in his house for 4 hours.
Yeah.
You want to say, listen, we're going to take a quick tour of the place. Then we're going to sit down. I'm going to ask you questions. You can ask me any questions. That's the agenda. They want to know what you're going to do, right? Because for all they know, you're going to break a hole in the wall and check the insulation. And then you want to say, and if it makes sense after to take the next step forward, then we will. So that puts them at ease and allows them to say no. So you want to set the stage. Then I say, can we take a quick tour? Sometimes that's quicker, sometimes it's slower, but we take a tour. And geez, my phone is going bonkers. I'm sorry. And really, so my goals at every appointment is twofold. First is to get a feel for how much does this thing really need in repairs, right?
Yeah.
And can we possibly sell it as is on a wholesale deal? Is it possible? My second goal, and really the more important goal, is to sit down with the seller and get to the bottom of why they're selling and to figure out if they have a problem that I can solve, right? That is really the only thing I'm trying to do. So if somebody shows me their house and they want $1 million for a house that I can't pay more than $200,000 for, they don't really have a problem I can solve. But I also take listings. So if they have reasonable requests, and if they tell me that, listen, I want $600,000 for the house because I owe 500 and I need 100 to wherever I'm going, I might try to see if they want to list with me, if the house is in good shape. And I've also been to many appointments, probably hundreds, where the person was like, I want to sell it to an investor, and then I get in, the house is in great shape, and I get there and I go, this house is really not bad, and you really can list it. And I would advise you not to sell it to an investor because you're going to leave $100,000 on the table. And I've converted a lot of those to listings. I just took 2 listings this week. In situations where I couldn't have bought it at a discount, and people aren't stupid. They would have figured out that they didn't have to buy a discount. One was really a shithole of a house, but she just doesn't have any equity in it and she needs some money. So that's my 2 goals there. I'm trying to figure out, hey, what does this need for ARV shape? Can I sell it as is or doing minimal work to it? That's A. And B is, what is the seller's problem and can I help solve that problem?
That's the way to go, because at the end of the day, a lot of people, especially new investors, and if they have no money, I understand they want to make money as soon as possible, which is human nature. They forget about they're a problem solver and their ability to solve a problem. Their income is in direct proportion to their ability to truly solve a problem. So I've found that if you go to that house or you're on the phone, whatever, and you're there to really qualify for a problem, number one, like if you're going to the doctor's office and you think you're sick and the doctor says you're not sick, well, he ain't going to fix you, So, but if you go in there and you have a service mentality and you operate that appointment, whether that's virtually or in person, with that as your guiding principle, you're going to be able to have better conversations, because that's the paradigm you're acting upon versus like, I'm in here to make money. How do I make the most money on this house? Like, that's like a plumber coming to one of my projects and saying, how do I get Greg for all he's got and make the most money by fixing his pipes? I could smell that a mile away and I'd tell that guy to go fly a kite, but if he goes in there and he tells me, I want to try to solve this plumbing problem as best as I can so you can have the best building performing, it's a different conversation.
Absolutely.
So Michael, here's something that I want that is, I don't want to bash sales training because I'm not bashing it, but I want to come up with something that is more in line with reality. it happens more than people think. And I have made a lot of deals from this, and it's the whole I want to think it over thing. So there's a big thing in any sales training that you see. It's going to talk. You have to get a yes or a no. I have found from my experience that at least in the areas that I operate in, New York and California, these are freaking expensive properties, and there's a lot of decision makers involved, especially when it's a trust sale in California. Like there could be a shitload of people involved in that. Attorneys, New York, you got a lot of other people involved. So I have found that a lot of the deals that I do, they had to think about it, but it's not a bullshit think about it where, oh, I'm just pushing you off and I'm kicking the can down the road, but they have to weigh out their options. They got to talk to their attorney. They got to talk to their siblings. It's one guy there or one gal there, and then there's siblings, and they really have to think about it. And if I were to go and say something like, oh, I need a yes or no right now, I can guarantee that would have lost me deals, and probably I would have 6 figures less in my bank account than I do now if I were to do that. So in order to combat that, I want to know, the most important thing I want to know is, and here's why people say you got to get a yes or no, because you ultimately, the reason they're saying this, because you want to put yourself in a position of control when you're selling in order to know what their next steps are if they like whatever you present to them. So if we can accept that as true, I want to know what is the seller's next step if they're happy with everything that happened at the meeting, whether it's on the phone or whether that's in person. And then that answer will get, brought out before I make an offer. So then I know what I'm working with. So what I will do to combat that is I will focus more around what it's going to look like if they're happy with everything. Obviously, the number is something that's important, which I address, but I want to know that they're going to be able to move forward, assuming they like everything, versus me saying, can I get a yes or no before I leave today? They're going to tell me, like, I don't even know who you are or what this offer is. So you can go fly a kite and get out of my house. And I used to do that, and it would bite me in the ass. So what do you do? Because it's interesting, because I do it a little differently, and it's a little counterintuitive, and it makes me a lot of money. I'm saying I have the deals to back that up.
I agree with your assessment. So in New York and even in California,
yeah,
not just because of the price, but certainly in New York, where the process takes a lot longer.
Oh, it's so long. Yeah.
People in general are not meeting with 800 different sellers.
No.
800 different buyers, and they're going to take longer. In a lot of other parts of the country, there's a chain of 50 buyers walking into a house.
Oh, it's a one. Yeah, you're at the plate once, and if you swing, you're going back to the dugout.
Talking about in Dallas or any major city in Texas, or
Vegas,
North Carolina, Vegas, Phoenix. So in those areas, I understand the idea of saying I need an answer right now.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're just going to get jerked around. So I usually don't do the I'm not taking a maybe from you. I don't do that.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work.
But I understand how it would work in a lot of situations. I don't do it. And I very often have to, I just got a contract emailed to me today where the guy agreed to sell it to me in like May. Like that's how long
it's almost August.
And he has a sister there who he had to find a place from. And like we were in touch. Like I couldn't have told this guy, well, I'm going to take that as a no. Right. The guy kept calling me and telling me I'm selling the house to you. So it's a little bit different. And we've gone through this before. I believe very strongly that in New York, the average person in the state of New York does not look at their property as a really liquid asset.
That's true.
If they're in a financial bind, they're not saying I better sell my house and get the money quickly. Now, in 49 other states, you could probably close in 4 days, right? You can get in California, you can close.
Oh yeah, California, you can close in 4 or 5 days.
But
it's
in
not
New
that
York,
hard.
people know this is just taking a long time. So if they're in a pinch, they're not looking for that. They're not looking for quick cash from their house. They're not. I'm not saying that I haven't bought people who had were in financial distress and ended up selling their house, but I think they understand this is going to be weeks, if not months, of a process. Just the way the thing works. So I never put somebody like on the spot and say, hey, if it's not a yes, I'm going to take that as a no. I don't do that, but I understand why it's a valuable tool in other parts of the country.
Yeah, I think in New York, I think the mentality is different, and it's if you're in a competitive situation and you're like in an area where like the guy's going to walk out with a signed document, I see that being valid. But a lot of people, they might really like you, and they might like your process, and they might like that you didn't put pressure on them. And I've found that a lot of the sellers, they need to really know that you're there to solve their problem before they commit to wanting to do business with you. And it doesn't matter if you're in New York or California, wherever you are. And I've found that I always say this one thing to sellers, and it puts them at ease. I learned it from Frank Kern, and I put my own spin on it. It's like, listen, no matter what happens with this house, I'm going to be helpful the entire time. I'm not going to jerk your chain. I'm not going to freaking, do this dog and pony show. I'm going to help you, whether it results in me buying this home or whether it results in me just telling you some free advice on what you should do with it. It's going to be helpful. I'm not going to bullshit you. And people assign a lot of value to that because
Absolutely.
most dickheads will come in there and they'll say, "Oh my God, Sally, your roof, it looks like the World War II happened and that Normandy came."
Let me write that down. It's $80,000 for the roof.
And I see a lot of these people who they just walk around they have no idea what they're doing, and they just, yep, 250, take it or leave it. It's like, that's not how you add value, So I found, go ahead.
I agree with you completely. I do something similar. So I tell people almost every appointment I leave, I go, listen, whether you sell me the house or don't sell me the house, whether you list with me or don't list with me, you can always call me.
Yes.
Anything you need. If you need somebody to help you with cleanup, I have people for that. If you need somebody to fix something, I have people for that. I'm here to help you in any way that I can. I don't buy every house that I go into, so don't feel bad using me as a resource. And it's definitely great.
Oh, totally.
And almost nobody ever calls me for help, but I put them at ease that I'm here to help. And I know that I may not buy this house, and that's fine.
Exactly. And that's the key. They want to know that you're there to help no matter what. And it's like if a plumber's like, "Hey dude, whether you want to work with me or not, like if you ever need anything with your plumbing, give me a call and I'll help you. I'll give you some advice." And that's how you.
And the best contractors I've ever dealt with were people like that, where they came to me and they said, "Listen, this is what you could do, but I fixed something. I'm not going to charge you for it. And if you ever need anything, call me." And then I'm like, that's a guy I want to call. A guy who I have an air conditioning guy that I use. He's amazing. He came to my house 3 times and never charged me. So I would never use anybody else now. Like I love that guy. I know he's a good guy and he's trying to help me. So
exactly.
I think it's an important part of the process for sure.
Exactly. No, that's so true. And the other, I'll flip the script real quick, just so I want to play two sides of the same coin. So I'll give you a real life example right now on a deal that it's competitive, which happens sometimes. So this guy called me up, and he's got a deal with a non-paying tenant, and it's from a mailer. So everyone's sending mail nowadays, and he was the one, it's 150 for it, and that's just a fantasy with his tenant inside. It's in Rockland County, so it's in a really desirable area. That's pretty cheap too for Rockland County. And so I offered him 100, and he's like, no. And then another investor came in. I know the investor, shocker, and we're just going to JV it so we don't compete with each other. And so he's basically said he is going to sell at 115, but he kept giving me kind of like some bullshit. When you kind of sell, like they're kind of jerking your chain a little bit. And I'm like, listen, Paul, I doubt he's listening. So I'm not scared. And I said, listen, Paul, I totally understand what you're doing. It makes total sense. I would do the same thing if I were you, which is true. I want to make sure I'm not getting hosed. I said, listen, let me ask you this, Paul. If your attorney is on board with everything that you and I discussed and every concern that you shared with me is addressed, what are you selling? Who would you sell the property to? And it was just an open-ended question. He said, "You know what, Greg, you're a nice guy. I can tell you're not like a desperate, bottom feeder. He's a pretty direct person." I said, "Thank you." And he's like, "I'm going to sell you the property, assuming my attorney is happy with everything." So he gave me a commitment that he's going to sell me the property. Ultimately, we will see if he does that or not. But the point of the matter is that sometimes you need to push without being pushy. So that's kind of what I meant by that story there.
No, the way you do it is great, because you basically future pace the seller.
Yes.
And I do this. So I start all my calls really with that. I say, listen, assuming we can come together on price, like one of the first questions I ask people, assuming we can come together on price and all the major details, when would you want to sell it? So they're already thinking coming together on price. And at the end, so what you're doing is getting that next step. I should do that more. I don't do that enough. But I should say, listen, assuming we all work this out. I just had a deal. You helped me with a deal. I think we're going to do it.
Good.
Where I said it was all about price completely, but I said to the guy, assuming we agree on price, like what's the next step? And so the guy was like, "Oh, well, my attorney will send you the," I may even know the answer, but future pacing is a good deal. But on the same note that we spoke about before, I just want to elaborate a little bit on it, which is the fact that all these newbie investors are in the market who don't know what they're doing. And in New York, they attack people with this, I'll close in 24 hours, which no one can close in 24 hours. I'll close in 2 days. I'll close right away. Sell me your house, sell me your house. That is great for people like you and me, because those guys give such a stink of desperation off of them that when they meet somebody who's not selling all the time, and you and I, who are perfectly willing to push back on a seller, pushing back on a seller is like the greatest thing ever. Like the greatest, I teach all the people I speak to, anybody in lead intake or cold calling, I go, the greatest thing you can do is say to a seller, listen, we're investors, we have to buy at a discount. Sounds like we're not a good fit. That nothing bad can come from that. You're never going to lose a deal by saying that. What happens is either the guy's going to go, you're right, in which case you aren't going to buy the property anyway, or the guy's going to correct you and go, whoa, wait a second. I got a problem that you can solve. So the ability to push back and the ability to not stink of desperation are probably two of the greatest assets that somebody in our industry can have. And it's something that's so rare. It's amazing.
That is the biggest game changer in any sort of communication, is when I think people are so scared of the truth in the beginning, new people, even people who are experienced, who just have kind of been flying by the seat of their pants. I used to never say to the seller, I'm intending to make a profit on their house. I learned that from Mr. Toback, because it's not taught in general sales training. Right. And I think it should be taught more, because the seller's got to, like what does Chris Voss say? Yes is nothing without how. So just because the seller tells you yes does not mean that they're going to actually like implement the deal and implement everything, which in New York and even in California, it's kind of a process. There's more people involved. So when I tell the seller that I need to buy it at a price that allows me to make a profit, it gets them to realize my side of the table. I used to just be so gung-ho on their pain and all the deal killers, which is important, but I'm like, listen, this is how I frame it too. There's two things I want to share in this podcast that people can implement right away and definitely get more deals. Is number one, the number has to work for you, but the number also has to work for me. So I say that very deliberately, just the way I said it. It's got to work for you because it is about them first, but it also has to work for me. So it's got to be at a number that allows me to make some sort of a profit. What are your thoughts on that? And then I get them to kind of reflect on what I told them. And then the second thing I love to say when I get a price out of a seller is I say, listen, it's all about pre-framing what their perception is. And this is more just like NLP and stuff, which is not voodoo like manipulation. It's just how to communicate effectively. Some people are like, oh, all this crazy shit. You manipulate people. I'm like, fuck off. No, I don't. You just go manipulate yourself, So it's true. I'm like, fuck off, go read the damn books and go do the damn work, Right. I always say, listen, Bob, in order for you to be really happy with everything, for me to buy this house as is and close on your timeline, considering I do need to make a profit, what number would you be happy with? That specific line, you can change it up if you want. That gets him to perceive what he wants based on the reality of his situation, not just, hey, Bob, what's your price? Like, he's going to say, like, and listen, the first question I asked, it's not going to get you like 10 out of 10, but it's going to probably 6 or 7 out of 10 going to get the seller to say a different number than they would have already said in their mind, because they're basing that answer on how you pre-frame the question.
Say it again. How do you frame it? Say it one more time.
Hey, Michael, considering that I'm going to buy the home as is, I'd make this the easiest sale of your life and do everything that you said that you wanted me to do. Considering I do need to still make a small profit, with everything I just shared, what number would you be happy with at the end of the day? And I pre-frame what his price might be versus like, hey, Michael, so what do you want for your house? That's a very naked question. But when you dress that question up with a pre-frame, sometimes 6 out of 10 times, they're going to give you a different number just because you pre-frame the way you ask that question. Assuming you have some rapport with them and there's like a real sale on the hook here, you're not dealing with some jerk off who's like, fishing you around. That one question will move the needle, because he might have said 100, or he might have said 500, right? But once he knows what he needs and what you need, he might say 475. And listen, that might not be a deal, but at least he already talked himself down 25 grand without you even saying, hey, can you do better? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's these little things that really move the needle.
Before you start negotiating, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something I've found very helpful. And
Another thing I just remembered, we're talking about what we were saying earlier, and what I find a lot of people are not successful in this business because deep down they think what we do is predatory.
oh, I'm so happy you brought that up, dude. You just took it right out of the bag, man. Right out of the travel bag
People
onto the fucking
feel
table.
like people don't know how this business works. I mean, I've spoken to people, tell them what I do. They look at me like I'm from outer space. Why would anybody sell their house to you? Like they think that we are just
Yeah.
predatory vultures grabbing these poor old ladies and ripping their house from them. That's not what we do, right? And if you think that's what we do, and you're a good person, you're gonna have a real trouble making offers and being successful at this business. We are problem solvers, right? We basically buy properties from people who know that they probably can get more for the certainty and convenience that we provide for them, right? Just like going to Starbucks and paying $7 for a cup of coffee that probably costs 20 cents. You are doing that because you want the certainty and convenience that Starbucks is providing for you. People come to us and sell because they want the certainty to know that we're going to close at the number that we give them, and we're not going to jerk them around and show up 4 months later and say, I didn't get a mortgage like a regular retail buyer. They want to know that they probably don't have to have 55 open houses. They want to know they can probably leave a lot of their crap there. And they want the convenience that we provide, or whatever tailored solution we provide for them. We do not in any way take advantage of anyone. This is a voluntary transaction. That's how it works. So if you don't have that in your head, and I've spoken to people who I can pretty much read, they don't have it in their head, it's going to be very hard for you to be successful at this business. You have to really believe that deep down in your heart and in your brain.
That's so true. And that is something that a lot of other people might whisper in someone's ear, like, oh, how do you get a house at half off and be able to sleep at night? It's like the seller from day one knows it's an autonomous sale, and I don't hide anything from them. I tell them everything that I'm going to do, especially sometimes I'll just tell them I'm wholesaling their house and I'm making a big profit. And that's what they signed up for. I don't say that every time, but sometimes I will, depending on the scenario. And I see that how does someone fix that? Like, how does somebody fix that belief? Because that's a very valid concern you brought up.
It's a great question. And I don't know. I mean, I say it all the time, and I have people who listen to it, and I talk to people who I know don't believe it. And I feel bad, right? So when I'm coaching a student, I go, you need to get this into your head, right? You need to get into your head that you are not taking advantage of anybody. I go, no, you don't twist anybody's arm to sell to you. And it's usually clear that you're, and I go, say I got to buy it at, tell them to say it 3 sentences, right? I'm an investor. I got to buy it at a discount. It's got to make sense. And they're willing to sell to you. And this is going on probably 10% of the time throughout the country, right? About 90% of the houses are going to get listed with an agent on the MLS. 10% are going to sell off market to people like us. Like, this is the way it works. People understand that. They're not really paying, but they're taking a discount in exchange for what we provide. We provide a service and we solve problems.
Exactly. And I think the better they get at communication and the more transparent they are, the easier, that might be the best way to solve it. When they know how to push back and they know to tell the seller all their options, that's when they can sleep at night. I did air quotes if someone's not watching the YouTube video, because the seller knows what they're getting into. I think this is where they might trip up. It's like, if there, I see so much bullshit online, as you probably do, and there's all this crap around the close-a-thon, who can close the most deals. Like they have some
ABC,
boiler room.
Always be closing.
Yeah, like they have some boiler room where they have 95, what, like you would say, Neanderthals in the back, with a bunch of meat they throw into the pen every 10 minutes. Yeah. And I think that is why I think people might get that perception, because they see something that's ultimately not true, or they see some jerk off getting 20 contracts a month when they're closing 5, and they think that they just got to get contracts, they have to, get money or something, like they're a hustler. I don't know what the mentality is, but I've always found that to be, number one, BS. And number two, if you get good at communicating, which is just simply understanding how people think and how to solve problems, that's all communicating is. I don't even like the word sales, because it's not really a sale. It's just a communication. Negotiation, same thing. You're just getting clear on the sale, right? You're getting clear on the communication.
Right.
And
I tell everybody, ask the seller, why wouldn't you list it? Why wouldn't you keep it? Why wouldn't you rent it? You want to ask that, right? the idea that the seller doesn't know he can list it, keep
Oh,
it, or rent it, and that you're going to enter that into his
yeah,
mind and lose the deal is
it's
ridiculous.
insane.
Right? People aren't nuts. They know that they can list it, keep it, or rent it. I asked it, and everybody should ask it.
They know what a realtor is. That's why I always bring that up, because that's the biggest deal killer I see in Cali and in New York. It's like, yo, my house worth 700 grand. I want to list it for 700 grand. Good for you. I really think and I always agree with them. And it's true. I'm not bullshitting them. I'm like, listen, it sounds like you're looking to get the most money for it, and listing it is ultimately the best thing you should do. And I think that's a great idea. And that's pushing back. They're going to either say, well, I called you because I really don't want to have to deal with my tenant who just got out of jail. You know what I mean? Or they're going to say something like along the lines of that. Or they're going to say,
100%.
I agree with you. You know
I
what I
say
mean?
all the time, listen, if you want to squeeze every dollar out of this house, listing it is always going to get you the most money.
100%.
I go, that is an option. I said, now, sometimes I say to them, I just want you to know, you have 12 non-paying tenants in the basement who are going to be a problem when you list it, because they're going to, there might be an issue that I might tell them, but I always tell them, list it. If you want the most money out of this, then you got to get it vacant and be prepared to sell it broom clean, and then list it. Do that. And I go, you list with me or list with anybody, it doesn't matter. That'll get you the most money.
Totally. I found too, like, is it even, I mean, I guess it's possible, but I've never seen like an MLS listing where it's like tenant inside. People don't even waste their time.
I've seen them, but they're there, but they're getting sold to investors for investor prices.
Yeah, it's because no retail buyers.
I was comping out a property today in an area that's going for, things are going for 600,000, and there was something that sold occupied for 400,000.
Oh yeah.
I'm saying that it's gonna, that's might be what I would offer anyway. So yeah, it's possible. It's possible to do. I don't know if that guy got any more. He probably got less than he would have if he would have met with me. I could have paid him 4.25 or something. So,
That's right.
I'm just saying that it's possible. But when somebody tells me they have a non-cooperating tenants, I love it, because I know they're probably not going to sell at retail, and most of my competitors aren't going to buy occupied anyway. So I'm thrilled.
Especially when they're doing volume, they don't want to fuck with that. It's going to fuck up their chain. So as last segment of the show, I think we have some time for it, is, having some safety precautions when you're meeting with strangers. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because I had a weird experience one time that still fucked me up to this day, and I'll share it, and then we'll get into Michael's experience with it.
You don't even know what really happened. That guy could have just been a nice guy. He was just a creepy guy, right?
He was coming at me some sort of way, like when you're on the dance floor and they're like, this guy was coming at me like, if I knew Krav Maga, I would have motherfucking teed this guy up, So anyway, he was a nice. Well, I don't know if he was a nice guy, but anyway, long story short, I was at a house. The guy was giving me bad. This is a long time ago. It's probably 2017 or 2018, and he just was giving me these weird vibes, and ultimately what happened was he tried to approach me. I thought he was trying to potentially rob me. I didn't have a lot of cash on me. I didn't have a nice car at the time or anything. So he would have fucking gotten $100 and a fucking Hyundai Elantra. So good luck, bud. Today it'd be a little different of a story. If he went near the Audi, I would have had to motherfucking anyway. So what happened was he tried to pursue me, and it got me to realize, like, you're meeting with a bunch of strangers who you don't know from Adam, who called some bullshit telephone number. Maybe you should do some homework when you're going to go meet with a stranger, because how often does this happen? So it just got me to realize, number one, if you're going to go meet with people, understand that, yes, you are taking a risk. It's very low probability risk, but at the same time, if you get a weird feeling in your stomach about who you're meeting with, maybe they're not on the deed or whatever the case, maybe there's some meth heads there. You got to kind of know in advance kind of what you're getting into. And what I like to do now is, if I'm meeting with some wiener head, I'll go online and I'll look them up. I'll skip trace them. I'll see if they have any criminal records. And I just do a little bit of homework just to make sure I'm not meeting with a psychopath. So Mike, you've been to more properties than I have, because I do a lot of my shit over the phone now. So what is your experience with that? Because on Long Island, there's a ton of fucking weirdos out there. There's so many people. There's just the probability of seeing a weirdo in Long Island is higher than wherever I am in San Diego.
Many weirdos. I've never felt unsafe, but that might just be me. I'm a pretty big.
You're tougher than me, though. I'm a little bit more of a pansy than you. I think you're bigger than me.
I'm 200 pounds. I did take Krav Maga for 2 years also. So I've never had a situation where I felt unsafe. But if I was a 120-pound female, I might look at it differently. So I recently had a YouTube comment where somebody asked me about that, and I'm like, you know what? I never thought about it. I said, but if I was a small woman, I might be concerned. So there are a few things that you can do. I said, obviously, you can take somebody else on the appointment, or at least leave them in the car. That should be enough. But I would say I understand it's a concern. Like I understand that, but I said most of it's a feeling. Like you said, you got a bad feeling, you got bad vibes off the guy. Most of the time, you're gonna get bad. You're gonna know when something doesn't seem right. I think you can get enough of an instinct to figure that out. But again, I've never felt unsafe at a meeting. I felt disgusting. I've been in houses. I'm doing something tomorrow night in a house. As soon as you walk in, there is a huge pile of feces, and I don't know if it's human or animal. It's disgusting. There's flies. It's gross. Like I've been in places where I was gagging because the smell was so bad. But I've never felt unsafe. So but I understand why if you were small or a female or both small and female, you might want to be concerned. And I think on some level, if you really get a bad vibe, you might want to just tell the guy, let's just talk outside.
Have you ever had you've never had a situation where you got like what was the sketchiest house you've been in, if you could remember, where you were like not scared but a little like, okay, this person is a absolute fucking nut job?
So I almost bought a house recently that was already condemned by the town of Oyster Bay. The house smelled so bad. The guy was a hoarder, blamed it all on his dead wife that she was a hoarder, but she had been dead for a long time. He was a hoarder. And the house smelled so bad. I almost dry heaved in the guy's kitchen. It was so disgusting. And he kept telling me it has to be knocked down, has to be knocked down. And I'm like, you're still living here. Like the town,
he was living in there?
The town of Oyster Bay put up a fence around it and he went in anyway. And they put a demolition order to knock it down. And he was still there. And,
oh my God.
It was horrible. And it was and it's so sad because the only reason why it's horrible is because of neglect. There was like a attached garage on the side. A tree had hit it. God knows how many years ago, and they had never repaired that. So there's a huge gaping hole in the back of the house into the garage. But the rest of the house didn't need to be bad. They just had bags and bags of crap. The guy didn't throw anything out. He had dirty bottles from looked like from 1965 there.
That's sad when you see that, man. Some of the way people live, it's just crazy how
I spoke
happens.
To the neighbors, and the neighbors are like, I can't wait till I knock the house down. It's so bad. And like I understood. It's pretty gross. It was pretty gross.
Is it a deal, you think, or is he fucking with you?
It's got a demolition order, so it's only really worth the land. Like the town basically said, we're gonna knock it down, or if somebody buys it, we'll let them knock it down. But
you can't reverse it.
The guy wouldn't sell it for the land value. He wanted more money.
He's fucked. He's gonna
get knocked down, and he's gonna eventually sell it for much less than I would have given him. And that's all. And I know I'm gonna call the guy back. I'm waiting for him to knock the house down.
I've postponed that before in Texas, where like there was some sort of a cowboy demo. Like in Texas, it's a little different, but some cowboy was like, "We gonna knock his house down," and we like went down to the court and we're like, "Dude, like chill the fuck out. Like we're buying this thing. Like relax." I don't know. Some towns, it really depends. Like you said, in Long Island, though, it's so expensive to build. The town of
Oyster Bay is gonna demolish his house. He didn't show up to court like 50 times.
Oh yeah.
Sort of like whatever. A lot of guys, we deal with people very often, and it's probably a topic for another show. But sometimes you got to call somebody like 100 times to get in touch with them.
Oh yeah.
You don't want to face the situation that they're in. Like this is a good example. This guy did not want to face the situation that he's in. If he would have faced it 10 years ago, he could still be in the house. Like he could have.
Oh yeah.
They just don't want to face it. So sometimes I'll get a call from someone and they'll leave him a name and a number, and then we'll have to call them 80 times till he calls back. And my leads people are saying, we can't get in touch with this guy. And I'm like, he's raised his hand and said he's interested. Sometimes we need to stay in touch. Sometimes we need to follow up with him for a very, very long time.
Totally. It's interesting. I had a similar scenario. It's not a deal, but this house, similar, like piece of shit, vacant. And then the owner actually lives like a block over. And I knew where they lived and went over there, and they just were just sitting in there. I called the son like a psychopath, not to manipulate him, but because he has to do something with his house. It's like a tax sale, and I'm like, I called the guy fucking 10 times in like 2 minutes, just like a maniac. And I'm like, I'm like, important information about your house, which is all true. Like, I'm not pulling some tomfoolery, like important information about your house.
On the 10th time he picked up?
Didn't answer the phone. So then I left him a voicemail, and then I texted him and said, urgent, important information about your house. Please call back for details. And the guy called me back, and I didn't recognize the call. This was a couple hours later, and he left me a voicemail like, if you ever can call me again, I'm going to go over there and stick a crowbar in your face, and I wasn't trying to like be a douchebag, but I was like, dude, ultimately you are a procrastinator. And because of that, you have equity in this property that you can capture by getting an offer legitimate.
Got to do it now.
And, the more you kick this can down the road, the less money you're going to get, if you can even get any money. So the point of that is that, you got to call people sometimes like a honey badger and thump your badger tail on the floor until the guy fucking answers.
I just thought of this. I have this lead in my system. I mean, this has got to be one of the craziest stories ever. I don't think I've ever even discussed this. I have a lady in my area who the village has decided that the house is unsafe. It probably was disgusting inside, and they boarded up the house.
The city did this.
She now lives in her car in the driveway and does not go into the house.
Oh my gosh.
She pays the taxes on the house. There is no mortgage on the house, and she lives in the car. So I said to her, I made her an offer. I said, listen, I'll buy the house. So she goes, well, how am I going to get my stuff out? I said, I'll break the lock. I said, I don't care. I said, I'll get you in there. I said, if you want, I'll drive there now and get you in right now. She's like, no, the village is going to get me in trouble. I have a lawsuit pending against them. Lawsuit, right? And then she went on for hours about how she's the victim of injustice and how the village is all corrupt. And I'm like, everything you're saying is probably true. I don't know anything about it. I said, but what? Do you really want to continue to live in your car and go to the bathroom in the 7-Eleven and shower at the gym? I go, don't you want to just do something? And the answer is no. She is happier fighting this battle against the injustices that she believes are done to her than dealing with it. I don't know if I'm ever going to buy the house, but that is a good example of what some of the types of people that you and I talk with. They just do not want to face reality. Now I'm hoping one day she changes her mind, and I'm going to call her every month till I die and or she dies or both of us die, because I hope that one day she's going to change her mind. But think about that. She's living in her car in front of the house. It's absurd. But people live with absurd situations very often in lieu of actually facing their problems.
I agree with you, and it's unbelievable to know that they have literally, I always say, like, equity sitting on their
on hundreds of thousands. I offered her hundreds of thousands of dollars. She goes, what am I going to do with it? I go, move into a hotel. I go, rent a place, buy something small. It's going to run out. I mean, she was fighting me about why I want to give her a check for, I don't know, $300,000 when she's living in her car. I go, you can't stay in a car. She goes, no, it's terrible. And then she went back into how the village screwed her. I'm like, take the money and move on. She goes, I'm going to sue them. I go, sue them after you take the money from me.
With the money to pay for the lawyer. People are nuts.
I don't think she has retained an attorney.
No, she's retained a bunch of bullshit. By the way, you just gave me a great topic for a future podcast: Crazy Stories Part 1 and Crazy Stories Part 2. So thank you for that.
I got we'll down. I didn't even remember the story until you talked about your.
Look at that. You never know until you start the podcast. So we're going to wrap the show up today. We're about 50 minutes, so this is a little bit longer of a podcast than we normally do. So I hope everyone got value on, how to meet with a seller in person, what to say. I think we gave everyone some real actionable tips here. We're holding nothing back. There's no opt-in funnel or anything. This is just facts here. Nothing wrong with opt-in funnels. Like, book a call with Greg.com. Listen, I'll gladly take your money, right? NYREI course.com, whatever your course is, whatever. Shameless plug there. But at the end of the day,
it's how to flip New York course.com.
How to flip New York course.com. If you want Mike's coaching, it's howtoflipnewyork.com. See,
no, that's just for the course. The coaching is coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com.
Coaching.
But we're not selling anything.
No selling here. We're just messing around. Anyway, so I hope everyone got value. I know they did today. If you are a loyal listener or if you're a new listener, head over to wherever you listen to this, leave a review. More importantly, though, if you got value today, this is the one thing we do ask, seriously. If you can copy this link, whether you're on YouTube or whether you're listening on your telephone or iPad or whatever, what are those things called? They're on iPad, what are those things called? Tablet. If you're on your tablet, whatever you're on, laptop, you can share this podcast with 5 people who you think can get value from it. That is how the show grows on a weekly basis, by people hearing it, assigning value to the content, and then sharing the content. So that's a little favor from that we ask to you. And we're looking forward to the next podcast show we're going to do. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Take care, everyone. Bye.